Hey everyone, welcome back to What If, the channel where we explore the wildest, weirdest, and most mind-bending what if scenarios about our world and beyond. If you love diving into strange science and fascinating ideas, make sure to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes filled with even crazier possibilities. Now imagine this. You wake up one morning, look out at the ocean, and something feels different. The waves still crash, the horizon still gleams, but the sea is no longer salty. Every drop of ocean water across the entire planet has turned into fresh water. At first, it sounds amazing, right? No more salty lips after a swim, no more rusty ships, and finally, an endless supply of drinkable water. But what would actually happen if all the salt in the ocean disappeared overnight? Well, the truth might surprise you, and not in a good way. You see, our oceans are not just big blue pools. They are complex, living systems balanced by their salt content. Salt helps regulate water density, which in turn drives ocean currents, the invisible highways that move heat, nutrients, and life across the globe. Without salt, these currents would collapse. The Gulf Stream, which keeps Europe warm, would slow to a crawl or stop completely. And that's just the beginning. Once all the seawater turns fresh, marine life would face total chaos. Most ocean creatures, from tiny plankton to giant whales, rely on salt water for survival. Their bodies are built to live in a salty environment. It helps regulate how water moves in and out of their cells. Without salt, this balance is destroyed. Fish would begin to swell and die as their cells absorb too much water. Corals, which form the rainforests of the sea, would bleach and crumble almost instantly. Even microscopic plankton, the base of the ocean's food chain, would vanish. Within days, the oceans would become massive graveyards of lifeless water. Next, the global climate would shift dramatically. Right now, salty ocean currents act like Earth's heating system, distributing warmth around the planet. Once the salt disappears, those currents stop. Tropical regions would grow even hotter, while colder areas might freeze over. You could see snow in cities that never knew winter, and unbearable heat waves where it used to be mild. The air itself would change. With so many marine organisms gone, the ocean would stop producing much of the oxygen we breathe. Nearly half of the world's oxygen comes from marine plankton, and without them, humanity would start to feel the shortage fast. Breathing could literally become harder. But that's not all. Without salt, the ocean's chemistry would shift in ways that could dissolve minerals and eat away at coastlines. Cities near the sea, like New York, Tokyo, or Mumbai, could face flooding or collapsing infrastructure. Still, humans might initially think it's a miracle. Billions of gallons of fresh water. But this miracle wouldn't stay pure for long. At first, people would rush to celebrate. News headlines would scream, "The oceans have turned to fresh water. The end of droughts." Governments and scientists would scramble to collect and store as much as they could. Desalination plants would shut down, and everyone would believe this is humanity's biggest blessing. But within a few weeks, that hope would turn into confusion. Freshwater is much less dense than saltwater, so the ocean levels would start to rise rapidly, flooding coastlines. The balance between the ocean and the atmosphere would collapse. Huge amounts of carbon dioxide once stored in saltwater would now escape into the air, heating the planet even faster. Then comes the rain, endless, heavy, acid-like rain. The new chemical balance of the ocean would cause massive evaporation, loading the sky with fresh moisture. Monsoons would rage in places that had never seen them before. Low-lying countries could vanish beneath waves of uncontrollable floods. On land, the new abundance of water might seem like salvation, but it would destroy the natural balance. Rivers would overflow, soil would lose nutrients, and plants that depend on certain mineral levels would begin to die. Farms would fail. Forests could rot from too much moisture. The ocean's color would change too. Without salt and marine life, it would lose its deep blue hue, turning pale, almost gray. The smell of decay would spread for thousands of kilometers, carried by winds across continents. And then, the most unexpected consequence, the Earth's gravity balance might shift. The redistribution of water mass would alter how the planet spins. Days could become slightly longer. Tides, once predictable, would vanish or act erratically, crashing with enormous force in some areas and disappearing entirely in others. It would be the end of the ocean as we know it, and the beginning of a strange, unstable new Earth, where life would have to evolve all over again. Within months, the oceans would begin to rot. Without salt, the delicate balance that keeps billions of marine creatures alive would vanish. Fish would die in masses, floating lifelessly on the surface. Coral reefs, the rainforests of the sea, would bleach and crumble, leaving behind ghostly white skeletons. Whales, dolphins, sharks, all creatures that rely on salt water, would suffocate and starve. The smell of decay would spread across entire continents. Soon, beaches would no longer be places of beauty. They'd be filled with decomposing sea life, black sludge, and bacteria thriving in the stagnant water. Diseases would emerge, spreading through the air and water, affecting humans too. Ports and coastal cities would become uninhabitable zones. The weather would grow wild. Ocean currents, which are powered by the difference in salt and temperature, would collapse. The Gulf Stream, for example, that warms Europe, would stop. Winters in Europe and North America would become brutally cold, while tropical regions would face unbearable heat. Global weather systems would spiral out of control. Even the air we breathe would change. Phytoplankton, tiny ocean plants that produce over half of Earth's oxygen, would die off without saltwater minerals. Oxygen levels in the atmosphere would drop. Breathing would become harder, especially at high altitudes. Human civilization would start to fall apart. Food shortages, rising seas, uncontrollable climate. Everything would combine into one global catastrophe. Nations would fight for survival, for habitable land, for clean water, for air. And yet, deep beneath what was once the ocean floor, new forms of life might start to emerge. Strange, saltless organisms born from chaos, adapting to the new chemical world. They'd be the first citizens of a new Earth, one reshaped by the absence of salt. So, in the end, a world without salt water would not be a paradise of endless drinking water. It would be a silent planet of death and stillness. The oceans that once sparkled with life would turn into vast, murky lakes, reflecting only the gray sky above. Humanity, once thriving beside the sea, would look upon it with regret, realizing that the salt, the very thing we thought made the water useless, was the secret ingredient that kept our planet alive. And maybe that's the lesson nature keeps trying to teach us. That balance, not abundance, is what sustains life. Without salt, there is no ocean. Without the ocean, there is no Earth. So next time you see the sea, remember, its salt is not just taste, it's the pulse of our planet.